Good afternoon, San Diego. Here with the breaking news, Eden Basin. European nations are beginning to view African and Asian societies as a source for raw materials and a market for Western manufactured goods. They're starting to use imperialism in order to extend the 1800s. Great Britain, France, and the Spanish are controlling much of Southeast Asia. Now with a report from the area, Enya Du.
Good afternoon, San Diego. It's Enya here today with your Worldly Report. Let's flash back to the early 1800s when Great Britain took control of Burma from their colonial stronghold in India. Years later, the immediate pretext for France's expansion in Indochina was for protection of France's religious missions, coupled with other desires to find a route to China. Then, in the United States, Congress approved President McKinley's request for war because he wanted control of the Philippines. Although the United States failed to destroy Aguinaldo's army, the American government declared the rebellion officially over. Anyways, the British imposed their own form of rule on Burma. It was divided into districts, with each an assistant commissioner. In the case of Western Malaya, Malay rulers were still allowed to rule, however under the guidance of a British resident. Right now, resident based on the force of nationalism is emerging.
Thank you for the report, Enya. Another story. With imperialism in the rise, Great Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and Portugal placed virtually all of Africa under European control. Here for a report, Elijah.
Thank you, Eden, and good afternoon, San Diego. Today I'll be telling you guys all about imperialism in Africa. After 1880 until 1900, Great Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and Portugal placed virtually all of Africa under European control. Great Britain started to take control of Africa when they established protectorates over Nigeria and established their first colony of the Golden Coast. In 1869, when the Suez Canal was finished, Great Britain took great interest in it and took over Egypt after about 45 years. And at the same time, Britain was fighting for Sudan. Also, France had control over Algeria and established a protectorate in Tunisia, while Italy joined the party by failing to take over Ethiopia. After that loss, Italy invaded and seized Turkish Tripoli, which we now know as Libya. The people of Germany had convinced their leader, Otto von Bismarck, to convert to colonialism, leading Germany to be after East Africa. Although Portugal and Belgium were also interested in East Africa, this created conflicts between them and Germany, and the Berlin Conference was held to resolve these conflicts. It split East Africa with Britain and Germany and gave Mozambique to Portugal. At this conference, no African delegates were present at the Berlin Conference, and we'll see how imperialism does when these African territories are being taken without the consent of the people who live in them. Moving on to South Africa, Cecil Rhodes is a very successful man who was able to create gold and diamond companies as well as become the Prime Minister of Cape Colony. Although he was removed from power when Great Britain found that he had been provoking the Boers, a very powerful group who were disgusted with British rule, into war. In 1910, the British defeated the Boers and created an independent union of South. By 1914, Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and Portugal divided up Africa, and only Liberia and Ethiopia were left as free states. After all of the fight over Africa, Africans felt segregated and unfairly placed in the world, and this led educated Africans to be determined to assert their own nationality. Now we'll move on to an interview with Dr. Livingston and Henry Stanley.
Thank you, Elijah. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Dr. Livingston, long lost, finally found. Dr. Livingston, when did you arrive to Africa, and with what intention?
I arrived in 1841 and spent the past 3 decades introducing the thus far unknown ideals of the 3 cornerstones of our society: Christianity, commerce, and civilization. I've led expeditions in the Zambezi regions and attempted locating the source of the River Nile, unfortunately unsuccessful. During these expeditions, I have observed the fascinating behavior and tradition of the native tribes and made efforts to precisely map out each area that I visited.
I see, quite honorable. How has your view of the natives and land modified throughout your journey?
I've come to recognize the true importance of my work, but also find a mutual admiration with the proud tribes of Africa. My medical skills have provided a better life for the natives, and aided by my assistants and myself on many occasions. I have come to recognize the true importance of my work, and also find a mutual admiration with the proud tribes of Africa. My medical skills have provided a better life for the natives, and aided my assistants and myself on many occasions. I stand by the ideal that Africa is a land of potential, both for the Westerner and its inhabitants.
Indeed. Did you achieve what you set out for during your expeditions? And if so, what ambition are you pursuing now?
Initially, my goals in Zambezi were to locate and examine natural resources and determine whether or not the river Zambezi was suitable for travel. I spent the past 5 years in an effort to find the source of the Nile, but have thus far been unsuccessful. I've returned home twice, but was drawn back to the enticing world of the jungle each time. During my mission, my assistants and I have made several botanical and geological discoveries. My recent illness, however, has forbade me from pursuing any other, and thus I have found refuge with one of the local tribes. And what was the purpose of your journey? Why track me down through hundreds of miles of thick and cruel jungle?
I was sent by the New York Herald to find the most famous explorer of our century, examine his state, and beg for his return to civilization. It was partially the sensation of the uncovering of a genius's whereabouts, who is the zenith of his expertise to this day, that drew me to you, admittedly. However, it saddens me greatly to see such a talent lie deathly ill, so far from his homeland, and in all honesty, there was perhaps the African heat that granted you your passion and enthusiasm, which transformed into zeal.
So you're just a newspaper man? Looking for a story? What potential do you see in Africa?
I wouldn't go that fine, my good sir. My views are a popular one of our era, in correlation with that of His Excellency King Leopold II. I believe it is our duty as men of advanced living and society to shine the light of civilization into the darkness of the African night, and assist these lesser men towards a modern standard. Not to mention the undeniable commercial opportunities this land may provide, and the vast amounts of profit that may soon become accessible.
You take much too materialistic an approach. Abhorrent slave traders worry about profits that they themselves can reap. These people are in need of a more grandiose revelation, otherwise they may never shift out of their primitive existence.
A final question to you, Dr. Livingston. Once the land has truly unveiled its potential, how do you think the world shall react?
Unfortunately, I believe that most nations shall make advances into the heart of Africa, which my noble efforts have mapped and uncovered, emplace their settlements, and shortly after seize the land for their own good. This rush will be quite a spectacle, if I say so myself, and perhaps in the end, Africa may catch up with their Western brothers in society and culture.
Thank you for your time, good doctor, and all the best to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Livingston, back to you.
To a different report. In the increasing British rule and eventual overpowering of the Indian states left its natives in widespread unrest with revolts throughout the country.
Thank you, Ed. Due to the expanding influence of the British East India Company, the majority of the Indian population is experiencing both cultural and religious difficulties with its British overlords. Tensions rose until the climax of the 1857 Sepoy Mutiny, bloody clashes between Indian soldiers under the company's rule who opposed the interest expressed by it and those who have remained loyal to the Queen. Although this land has come with great cost, it holds obvious benefits to both native and colonist. Thus far, the British have introduced vast railway systems, established a British education system available for higher-class citizens, and have installed the notorious telegraph. However, there is a price to pay for such advances as British manufactured goods and imports overpower local Indian industry. This leaves masses of people without jobs and in famine. There is wide civil unrest due to huge taxes, which is not calmed by the introduction of native workforce zamindars. The vast discrimination and overall ignorance paired with the disrespect of tradition and culture exhibited by the British has led this country in a debate whether or not its overlord is worth accepting. The appearance of Indian nationalists educated in Western systems in Bombay and Calcutta have tilted the scales towards the opposition of the British rule, as the Indian National Congress is formed in 1885 in Bombay, calling for a shared government process. Although the Congress is making efforts to better the lives of all Indians, the previously apparent differences between the Muslim and Hindu population are causing difficulties within the system, as the Muslims call for a separate league. Our guest tonight has traveled quite a journey, and is seeking to find peace and independence for all his Indian brothers and sisters. Having studied law in London and worked with the Indian population of South Africa, he has witnessed the exploitation and impossible conditions of Indians. He shortly after established his method of a non-violent resistance and set out to improve the conditions and grant the well-deserved independence of his nation. Ladies and gentlemen, Mohandas Mahatma Gandhi.
Hello, Gandhi. Thank you for being in our interview.
Thank you for having me at this interview. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. For my first question, how were you affected by working in South Africa?
I spent my 21 years in South Africa, where I developed my political views, ethics, and political leadership skills.
That's very interesting. Second question, how did you get Indian independence?
I took leadership of Congress in 1920 and began to study escalation of demands until on January 26, 1930, the Indian National Congress declared the independence of India.
Okay, all right. So for the next question, why were you criticized by some Congress members?
Because as the war progressed, I intensified my demand for independence, calling the British to quit India as a speech of Gwala Tank Maidan.
All right. For my next question, why were you arrested in Bombay?
Because I called all congressmen and Indians to maintain discipline via Ames Kada Ya model, which is the do or die cause of ultimate freedom.
Cause of ultimate freedom. What happened after the end of World War II when Britain gave clear indication that power would be handed to India?
At this point, I called off the struggle and around 100,000 political prisoners were released, including the Congress leadership.
This is very useful information, Gandhi. Thank you so much for being
Thank you for having me here.